called?
World record.
And, because he's the one that's going to.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us for our regular council meeting Tuesday, February 13th at 7 PM. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Charles Davidson,
Here.
George Glover,
Here.
Ben Salcetta,
Here.
Charles Schwenke, Terry Osborne,
Here.
Troy Hill,
Here.
Randy Bailey,
Here.
Jim Schrader.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And Councilman Schwenke let me know that he would not be here tonight, so we will proceed with the agenda. We'll start with the invocation by Pastor Jerry Elder, and Councilman Salceda will lead the pledge. Will you please stand?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council, Park City. It's encouraging as a pastor to see a city that still has the fortitude to ask for prayer over your meeting, and God bless you all. Let's pray. Father, we love you and we thank you and we give you praise and glory and honor this evening. Lord, what a gorgeous day in Kansas for February. Lord, I thank you for this council, for this mayor as they meet tonight. I pray that, Father, everything they do and everything they transpires in this meeting would bring glory to your name and be a benefit to all the members of this council and all the residents of this city. We pray your blessing on them, Lord Jesus. We pray this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we'll start with approval of the agenda, and in that, I'd entertain a motion to remove items 7 through 11. Ben,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the agenda, removing the items 7 through 11.
thank you. Brandy?
Second.
Okay, a motion by Ben, seconded by Brandy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We have no awards and presentations. And nobody signed up for public forum tonight. Staff reports. D.
Good evening. I have two things to report on to you tonight. First, each of you should have a copy of the 2024 budget in front of you. The senior accountant, city administrator, and I put a lot of work into compiling that book each year. Most of you went through the budget process and pretty much know what's behind the numbers. But in addition to that, the city's story of what happened in 2023 is also told on pages 7 through 25. And even though most of you were there for all of that too, we encourage you to read it, as we think you'll find it interesting. Our citizens can find a link to the 2024 budget book on our website on the Finance Department page. The second item, if you recall, during the 2023 budget process, council authorized budgeting a transfer to the Capital Improvement Fund in an amount not to exceed $750,000. However, that transfer was not funded during the budget process. The intent was that once all the entries for the year of 2023 were posted, except for that one transfer, if there was an increase in the general fund unencumbered cash over that of the prior year, we had authorization to go ahead and transfer that excess amount up to the $750,000 to the Capital Improvement Fund and then report to council at the next meeting. I'm happy to report, excuse me, that we were able to transfer the full $750,000, bringing the Capital Improvement Fund's balance up to $1,015,674. As an FYI, even after that transfer, we had an additional $1.5 million increase in our general fund unencumbered cash. Unspent. I'd be glad to respond to any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Dee. Seeing no comments, thank you. Okay, next we're on to the consent agenda. Jim
I would move to approve the consent agenda.
and Terry.
Second.
Okay, Motion by Jim, second by Terry. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. On to new business. Item 5, discuss and consider a proposed special use for a metal salvaging and recycling use in the I-1 Light Industrial District on property located at approximately 1,600 feet south of 61st Street North and approximately 1,400 feet east of Seneca. Russ.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, Russ Avey, zoning administrator. This is one of two planning items that came from our January Planning Commission meeting. One we're very familiar with. This one is new to the council. Last year, approximately at this time, we had incorporated into the city some property that had previously been incorporated by Wichita. That facilitated the development of approximately a 20-acre industrial park. The developer of that particular project also owned acreage to the south. It's a triangular shape. It would be to the east and northeast of Armstrong Street, just to the east of the railroad tracks that provides a boundary along our western border. That acreage is unplatted, but it is set to be platted during our next Planning Commission meeting. That is going to be the future site of a potential metal recycling and salvaging operation brought from Wichita into Park City. It's a relocation. So this business has been set up in Wichita for a number of years, relocating to Park City on this new greenfield development project. The actual special use will only entail one of the proposed lots. It's approximately a 5-acre site. It is a metal, like I mentioned, a metal recycling and salvaging operation. What they do is they do not process bulk metal scrap. It is already pre-processed, brought onto the site, heated and compressed into pucks, what are called pucks, that are easily or more easily transported off-site to their foundries and other end users for that material. So it's an intermediary processing site, and ultimately that was approved unanimously 6-0 by the Planning Commission. And I'll stand for any questions you have specific to that request.
Thank you, Russ. Is there any questions or comments from council? Jim?
I read through it and saw the process and really didn't have any questions on it. So I would move to approve the special use as presented.
Okay. And Ben?
Second.
Okay, no further comment on this? All right, this will be a roll call vote.
I'm sorry, this is, the last time I was up here doing this, it's an ordinance. The special use is ratified by an ordinance. I didn't know if that was a special voting requirement. Sorry.
Yes. Charlie Davidson,
Aye.
George Glover,
Aye.
Ben Salcetta,
Aye.
Terry Osborne,
Aye.
Troy Hill,
Aye.
Randy Bailey. Jim Schrader.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Okay, on to item 6. Discuss and consider approval of the Park Center addition, a final plat for a property located south of 61st Street North and east of Hydraulic.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the more considered final plats of my tenure here. We heard this, I brought this in front of you to have the plan for Park Center reaffirmed by the council in order to ensure that the final plat is the final implementation step of the design of the project. And what you see before you is the approved. This was no changes made from its original filing. We brought it to you on the 9th. The Planning Commission considered meeting, and after a very brief discussion, approved or recommended approval of the final plat for Park Center addition 6-0. And I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Okay, this one was cut off on our agenda item. Does this one need a roll call vote also? Okay. Ben?
I appreciate that we're back on this, getting this taken care of tonight. So I'd make a motion to approve the final plat as presented.
Thanks, Ben. Brandy? Or Jim, I'm sorry. Jim?
I was just going to second it also.
Okay. All right, motion by Ben, seconded by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we're at item 12. Discuss and consider creation of a community improvement district, or CID, and authorize the redevelopment and improvement project related to Hartman Arena.
Good evening. Dominic Ack with Gilmore and Bell, Bond Council of the City. What we have before you tonight is a resolution to call for a public hearing on the creation of a community improvement district. What a community improvement district would do in this case is impose an additional 2% sales tax on all retail sales that occur within the boundaries of that district, of that proposed district. That money would then be utilized to pay for costs of improvements within that district and costs of various developer projects, as well as to pay for some city infrastructure costs pursuant to your policy and city administrative fee and state administrative fees. Tonight's action, as I said, would call for a public hearing to be held following publication notices. We'd have follow-up with a public hearing and an ordinance to consider the implementation of that community improvement district and adoption of a development agreement, which would set forth the rights and responsibilities of the city and developer related to the collection and expenditure of those CID proceeds. So I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the CID process. I believe there's a representative of the developer in here as well if you want to hear more about the project.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Jim?
I'd just like to hear a little bit more about the project if we could, and what's appropriate there.
Sure.
I don't have it exactly right here in front of me, but from memory, I think some of the planned uses for the CID predominantly are related to some HVAC and internal improvements within the arena that, through our recent acquisition of that, have understood would be bring additional programming and value to the site, as well as some facade and signage improvements. We will be are in the process currently of going through a brand change or name change. We anticipate that based off of our purchase agreement when the property was purchased, that a name change denotation will change from Hartman Arena to, and that sponsorship is being offered to a select group that we are targeting currently. So as that evolves, there will be signage improvements along I-35. There will be signage improvements and facade improvements across the front of the arena. One of the things that we've identified as well is that there's a substantial HVAC improvement needed for the facility in order to be able to better conduct events and programming through the summer months. Last year was excessively warm during certain periods, but historically that has limited some of the availability of the arena to be as available in some of those periods, and I think the life of that system is in need of some significant repairs and changes, I guess. So those are the predominant uses. We are working obviously on developing the balance of the land that was acquired during that transaction. In total, we probably have 13 or 14 additional acres that are greenfield currently right now, and then have some other thoughts about how we improve the immediate programming around the arena itself. Maybe better utilization of the parking lot and some of those type of things. And then there's another, the identified project related to the public improvement, I believe, is the 82nd Street improvement. So currently, we, with your guys' help and support, are constructing the Arena Drive there in front. So that'll be a continuous street that is nearing completion as we speak. And there's a potential plan to connect 82nd Street from east to west that would take you from Arena Drive out to Broadway and kind of better facilitate traffic flow. And we anticipate and have been in some level of discussion and negotiation with additional users that have interest in relocating or locating in Park City for retail sales or commercial sales, I should say. So those are the predominant uses today, and you know, as additional activity continues to evolve kind of in that area between both of the other projects across the street, there at the 77th interchange, we anticipate there to be significant other strong demand for support services or other retail uses as some of those other assets get built out in close proximity. So that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Ben?
Yeah, I have a couple questions here as well. Looking here at this, so if I remember correctly, we have done a 10-year IRB for this project area already. Is that correct? That was, we
correct.
scaled it down. Okay. The CID, part of the CID is used for the arena purchase. So going back to recoup cost, I guess, for purchasing the arena is what part of what we're wanting to use the CID for. And then it says here that so far there's been a $4.2 million investment in this. Is that including that 3.2 then for purchase of it?
Yes, and the purchase price was a little bit more than that, and then the purchase of the land around it was in addition to the price of the arena itself. So the arena has historically operated at a loss, and with all of what we're driving in Park City, along with you guys, we have approached that maybe with a little bit different lens and believe that will change. But it it has improved in our opinion, and the operator and their team have done a great job facilitating that. But it's there's some challenges with that type of asset, and so yes, that is one of the proposed uses as well.
Okay. I guess part of it is from the public side of it versus the private side. It's a lot of investment that we're putting in here from a city on this project, between the IRB giving the tax abatement on that and then including a CID that would generate, we're looking at close to 22 million. Is that correct?
The CID doesn't have an investment from the city.
Correct. I guess, sorry, the additional sales tax, approving the CID district, the community improvement district would be something that we'd step in. Okay, I'm a little torn on this one here. It seems like there's a lot that I'm always for the private partnerships whenever we can. My question always is then what's the cost to the taxpayer on that? And that's where I think I'm a little bit more concerned on this one, just in the 10-year tax abatement, which I know we did not do it 100%. I am fully aware of that. But then a 2% sales tax basically added on for our users here to recoup costs. I don't know. I'm still, that's just my question, so I'm done.
Thank you, Ben. Jim?
I was listening to the conversation. Yeah, these CIDs don't really have any cost to the city, so and the taxpayers, from our perspective, I mean, obviously people that would attend there would have additional sales tax, but I'm open to other conversation, but I was going to make a motion to go ahead and approve Let's see, this will be a resolution 1191-2024.
Mayor, Council, you're aware this just establishes the public hearing. This does not do anything to approve the district.
Correct.
This one says.
Troy?
I'll second.
Okay. Question I have, does this 2% sales tax, does it go forever?
Goes for 22 years, sir.
years.
Or until the bonds, Dom can answer that better. The way I understand it, 22 years or bonds paid off. And
Yeah, 22 years or until the maximum amount of allowable costs have been recouped. So we don't currently plan for a bond issue here. If there were bonds, then yes, but it's planned to be pay-as-you-go. And so the development agreement would set out a cost cap and things of that nature. And if that was hit, and then at that point, it would turn off. Otherwise, the maximum term per state statute is 22 years.
Okay. So on the attachment to our agenda, Sean,
Yes, sir.
it would be the petition and the creation of it. At the very bottom of it is a map. And that map is the outline of where this 2% will be, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And the lots, I'm going to speak of, in terms of the frontage lots on the interstate, there's 3 of them, but there
Yes, sir.
are also to the north of there, there's a few, and then back to the south, there's several. Those would not be in this, however, they could be added later by a separate owner.
Correct. The district boundaries could be amended at a later date by going through the same process as establishing the CID in the first place. So it'd be a petition from those property owners. We'd call for another public hearing and then have another ordinance to consider at that point.
And is there limitations on what they can spend this money on?
So the CID Act itself is pretty broad and allows for a wide range of uses. For example, a CID allows for vertical construction that is owned by a private party as opposed to like a tax increment financing, a TIF, that does not. It's horizontal infrastructure. So CID is one of the more liberal tools as far as uses of those proceeds. The city has a CID policy that imposes some governors on that. And then the development agreement that would ultimately be brought forth in conjunction with the public hearing and approval of the district would further set out, here's what you can use the money on, and here's how you request that reimbursement, and kind of lock in a little bit tighter on what those uses would be.
Great, thank you. Jim?
Had one final question. Marlo, Brandy and I are comparing notes. Is this resolution 1191 or 1192? Depends on which agenda we're looking at.
The agenda I gave
You're not on.
The paper one that was,
Yes.
this is the most recent? Okay, so then it's 1191-20. I think that's what I said. I just want to make sure
Yes,
Was
the one that you
correct.
have at your dais is the correct.
okay, thank you.
Ben?
Yeah, and thank you, Jim, for clarifying, not that part, although that was good too. I did misspeak there concerning the onus that the city puts out on this, and I did catch that there, so I appreciate you catching that. My concern, again, I think is just how much the government entity has to be engaged in supporting through our actions, so, but it was a misspeak, so thank you.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. On to item 13, discuss and consider resolution authorizing the sale and conveyance of certain property to Six Rentals LLC. Sean?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Back in July of 2020, Council approved ordinance number 1104-2020, authorizing the issuance of taxable revenue bonds for Six Rentals LLC, Cutting Edge Lawns, for the purpose of paying for the cost of acquisition, construction, and equipping a commercial facility located at 6350 Armstrong Circle. Attached is both a letter of intent as well as Resolution 1187-24 that indicates Six Rentals LLC is electing to exercise the option to purchase the project as described in Section 17.1 of the lease between the city and Six Rentals LLC, as authorized in the original ordinance. The closing is proposed to be as soon as possible. There's no physical impact to the city, and staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Sean. Do I have a motion? Jim?
I could track with what they're doing here, so I would move to approve Resolution 1192-2024.
Thank you, Jim. Brandy?
Second.
Ben?
I do have one quick question, sorry.
You're good.
On here, fiscal impact, none. Are they not paying us for this property?
No.
What they're basically doing is the IRBs that were issued on their behalf, they're buying it back.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
So, I will make a public statement that Nick called me earlier today and said, hey, do I need to be here? And this is pretty much administrative in nature, that the IRB went to them, and we're very happy that within 2.5 years, they're ready to go forth.
I just saw the
and-
500,000 number, and I was trying to figure that out. Makes sense, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, motion by Jim, seconded by Brandy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Move to item 14, discuss and consider a resolution fixing a time and place for a hearing to determine whether the structure at 5258 Valentine Road should be condemned and ordered repaired or demolished. Doug?
Mayor and council, our building official has filed a notice with the city clerk that the structure, which is a house located at 5258 Valentine Road, has been inspected by his staff on at least 2 occasions and found to have conditions that violate the provisions of the city's structure code. Under state law, the city is required to set a public hearing and give notice to the owners and occupants of the structure before we can take any further steps to require correction of those violations. At the public hearing, the city council will hear any evidence from owners and occupants, and then also from the building official, and he'll set forth, probably with some pictures and specifics of what the violations are. The public hearing is set based upon what the statute requires, and it extends out to March 26th, and that's at a regular council meeting at 7 or 7:30. I would recommend that council adopt the resolution and set the public hearing.
Thank you, Doug. Charlie?
Doug, have we had any communication with the owners of this property that you're aware of?
I don't have a factual answer for that, but knowing how Bob operates and his staff, I'm confident that there
Okay.
have been attempts, and whether they've been successful or not, I don't know, Charlie, but
Okay.
he would not be coming forward had he not made several attempts to try to get these things resolved.
Thank you. With that, I'll move to approve Resolution 1193-2024, a resolution fixing a time and place for a hearing where the owner or lien holder of record of any occupant of the structure located at 5258 Valentine Road may appear and show cause why structure should not be condemned and order repair or demolished.
Thank you, Charlie. Jim?
I'd second that.
Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. On to item 15, discuss and consider an ordinance creating a new procedure for dealing with properties within the city that generate excessive calls for police assistance.
Mayor and council, what you have in front of you is a new article for Chapter 9 of the city, Chapter 8 of the city's municipal code, which is the health and welfare chapter. Which generally deals with environmental matters, grass and weeds things, our nuisances, and that sort of thing. What the city's been faced with recently that's kind of caused us to look at this ordinance that you have in front of you is specifically the hotel that's located north of Applebee's in that area, which has generated significant police calls and significant difficulties with the neighborhood. And probably suffice it to say we haven't gotten much of a response from that. And so in looking at how to deal with that, I've come up with this chronic nuisance chapter that can be added to what we already have in Article 8. I'm sorry, in the Chapter 8, Health and Welfare. This is a little different. It's in addition to all the powers that the city presently has to declare a property as a nuisance and then have due process and ultimately have the ability to abate the nuisance if the property owner doesn't take steps. This one is a little quicker, and it's based upon, for lack of a better word, let's call it police calls. It's really a little broader than police calls, and but it is one of several triggers, 15 violations that the police respond to at a property that would trigger the declaration of a chronic nuisance. Once a chronic nuisance is declared, and that's an administrative matter, it's not something that you do, it's staff that does that with the police department, then the owner of the property is invited, again, not compelled, but invited to come in and have a conference to discuss a plan for taking care of the conditions that have resulted in all these police calls. The person could refuse to do that, and that would then trigger the enforcement part of this, which I'll get to in just a second. Ideally, the owner of the property would come in, meet with the chief of police and other staff, and come up with a plan to improve the condition and to diminish the number of these police calls that the property generates. If a plan's adopted, then again, the ordinance requires that the property owner comply with that plan, and failure to live up to the plan, again, triggers the ability to enforce, which again, I'll talk about in just a second. This is a little different because this doesn't involve the city going forward and taking action on the property to clean it up and that sort of stuff, where we have to spend our money and then recoup it through assessments against the property, which is kind of a long and involved process. This is a little more immediate, and the stick in this ordinance is to charge the costs of the police, the direct cost for police calls on the property against the property. Now, again, I want to be accurate as an attorney to tell you that just because we can charge them with that, it's just like collecting a bill. If they refuse to pay, then we're going to be involved in a lawsuit. But it's a little easier because then we're filing a lawsuit to collect money, and we're not having to prove anything about that other than that we've complied with our ordinance. So that's a lot of information about this. This is patterned pretty much exactly after the City of Wichita's chronic nuisance ordinance. Several cities in the state have these sorts of ordinances, and they're all generally of the same structure as the one that you have before you. Again, I think the way to think about this is it's another arrow in the quiver that staff has in order to deal with problem properties. I would answer any questions that you might have, and lacking that, or if after they're answered, I would certainly recommend that you approve the ordinance.
Thank you, Doug. Charlie?
Great explanation on that, Doug. Appreciate it. I can just say firsthand, the city of Wichita did enact an ordinance like this a couple of years ago, and it has been very useful in addressing issues in our city. It's in a proactive way, kind of a proactive way, to help reduce crime and improve the quality of life. So I'm in full support of it. I'll let everybody else weigh in before I make a motion.
Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, a couple of questions, Doug. First one here, I'll go backwards. I gotta go back up to where I was at. Compliance period means a 6-month period of time for residential properties and a 30-day period of time for commercial or multifamily units, during which time a triggering event may occur. So basically, from the onset of the first triggered event, if another one happens within a 6-month period or a 30-day period for businesses, that's what triggers that
That's right.
chronic piece, as long as they hit that 2 or 3 pre-smart.
Yeah, that's correct. It's a quick trigger, but again, that doesn't trigger any, what I'll call punitive action. It triggers, again,
It sets in
the
motion.
invitation to come in and let's talk to us. And if you don't come in, then we move forward, or you come in and you generate a plan. And the plan has to be reasonable.
Sure.
Again,
So like if they, let's say it's a business, because a business has 3, right? Whereas a residential has 2. So if a business, let's say, hits 2 events in 30 days, does it start over, or is it just within a 30-day period? Does that make sense? Did I ask that?
the way I hadn't thought of that, but I think it's a running period.
Okay,
So
so-
yes, it doesn't start over, but you'd.
Within
if-
a
if you've-
30-day
if you've
period,
gone-
there's
If
2
you've gone
or 3.
6 months, then one drops off, well, then you got to get 2 more, not 1 more.
It's like the old AT&T rollover, right?
Yeah.
Sure. You get to keep that on there. Okay, the other question I have, and this is probably one of those more just abnormal things. So it has on both of these 1 shooting event. I think commercial and multifamily, or commercial and businesses are probably a little bit different than residential. And maybe it's a stigma that I'm thinking of more associated with it, but let's just, for instance, say my home is burglarized, and I do manage to take care of my property with necessary means, and I pull the trigger. Is that automatically going to classify me as a chronic nuisance under this, if I understand the 1 shooting event?
Okay, you're looking at the triggers?
Chronic nuisance property in the piece there, it says, the area immediately adjacent, okay, which is under the responsible party on which 2 or more trigger events or 1 shooting event or an execution of a search warrant has occurred.
I'm sorry, I don't hear the greatest. Where are you reading from?
In page 2, under chronic nuisance property, the definition there,
Okay,
it has 2 or more trigger events for a residential or 1 shooting event. And then commercial has 3 or more trigger events or 1 shooting event.
okay, shooting is defined. It's a defined term. And shooting is where there's gunfire by known or unknown assailants. I wouldn't characterize you defending your home as being a assailant.
Okay,
Yeah. So
perfect. That was my only question on that, because, yeah. Thank you.
Jim?
That's a great question, Ben. I like this, Doug. I like the creativity in this, and I like that it's economically someone that's generating all the calls is asked to pay for it, rather than all of the other taxpayers that are sitting at home not causing problems. So I just, for sake of weighing in, I think it's creative, and I kind of like it.
Thank you. Charlie?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve ordinance 1188, 2024, creating Chapter 8, Article 13 of the Municipal Code related to chronic nuisances, definitions of the same, abatement procedures, appeals by property owners, and providing for criminal penalties and civil enforcement measures.
Mayor and Council, thanks for the motion. Could I ask, there is a too restrictive provision for the assessment of the police service costs in Section 8 of the ordinance. It makes reference to law enforcement personnel. I'd like to have the motion today to approve be subject to a substitution of that phrase to read police department personnel, in order that there be no question about including code enforcement
Okay.
costs.
Okay, I'll amend my motion to include police personnel. Police department personnel.
Thank you. Jim?
And I'd second that with the amendment.
Any further discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
Charlie Davidson.
Aye.
George Glover.
Aye.
Ben Salzetta.
Aye.
Terry Osborne.
Aye.
Troy Hill.
Aye.
Randy Bailey. Jim Schrader.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. On to item 16, discuss and consider approval of updated procurement policy. B.
As discussed during the council orientation, your agenda packets include the updated purchasing policy. The purchasing thresholds have been changed as discussed, as well as other corresponding limits. Verbiage has been added regarding compliance with applicable laws and grant requirements when the city is awarded federal or state funding. A conflict of interest statement has also been added, as well as wording that price or rate quotes are not required when purchasing under State of Kansas contracts or the purchasing cooperative of Greenbush, since those entities have already bid and vetted those products and services. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Dee. Ben?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this back here, Dee. I know we talked about this a few years back, and just the need for us to be able to function cleanly as a city. We're not a full-time city council, and our ability to always be here at the drop of a hat is not always feasible. And so providing good parameters, but also strong abilities for our city to function through this is important. So I would make a motion here that we would approve Resolution 1194, 2024, amending Resolution 930-2016 pertaining to the City of Park City's procurement procedures.
Thank you, Ben. George Glover?
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
Is there any further discussion on this? Motion by Ben, seconded by George Glover. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh. On to item 17, discuss and consider approval of a bid for the community building.
Good
Gina?
evening, Mayor and Council. The community building was built in 1970 and has served as both a community meeting place and as a place to rent for holiday and family occasions over the years. In both 2022 and 2023, funds were budgeted to make necessary improvements and update the facility, making it both more usable and appealing. Attached is a quote from D&J Property Solutions LLC to make repairs to the building. Staff had the foresight to block out some potential construction dates. We have that split up into 2 periods, and if all goes well, everything will be completed by May 1st. And the contractor will leave the building in full usable condition for any existing rentals. So no one will rent the facility and have less than a building as anyone else. I stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thank you very much for going out and getting the work on this done, ready to go. It's a great facility, and it's used pretty much 52 weeks out of the year, pretty close, if not that. So I would make a motion to approve the bid from D&J Property Solutions LLC in the amount of $57,616 for renovations to the community building to be paid out of the General Fund Community Building Department.
Thank you, Ben. Charlie?
Second.
Great. All right, seeing no more comments, I'll just mention that this was something that's been a long time coming. I know over the years we've put Band-Aids on this, and even though it's really, I'd say, needs a lot of upgrades still, it still gets rented a lot. And it's a great price and a great resource for our residents. The one thing I'd ask is, are we doing before and after pics? Okay. That'd be a good thing to show later on after it's completed. So, very good. With that said, if there's no more comments from anybody, motion by Ben, seconded by Charlie, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we are at governing body reports. And Jim?
Have anything to report tonight?
Randy?
I have nothing.
Troy?
I don't have anything from any of mine. I do want to give a shout out to our road crews that came out and fixed a pothole here not too long ago. They did a great job, and it's got done quickly. So that's all I've got.
Very good. Terry?
I guess the only thing is, a little shout out to the water meter changeouts. They slipped in and out of our HOA with pretty much very little notice, and no issues and anything like that. So Good work there.
Very good. Ben?
Yeah, I want to start by wishing my wife a happy Valentine's Day tomorrow. Yep. Good brownie points, right? But also, just a couple things here. There are going to be some closures related to southbound 135 this weekend in certain areas going on with the interchange up at 135, 235, and K96. So be on the lookout for that. That's anticipated over this weekend. Also, I did have my coffee and convo scheduled for this Saturday, but I am going to have to reschedule that. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law are adopting a little 6-month-old in Texas. So I will be 2 states away and unable to attend. So just FYI, we won't be able to have that here this week.
Very good. George?
Yeah, I also like to wish my wife a happy Valentine's Day tomorrow. Some of the things coming up as far as community events, March 30th is our annual Easter egg hunt at Hat McLean Park. There's information on that as far as times on our Facebook page. Also, with the warm weather, the fish are starting to bite. As you know, we do the annual fishing derby every year. This year, it's June 15th from 9 to 11 at Chisholm Point Pond. There has been some people already fishing, so the fish are now just starting to bite. So all those fishermen out there or wannabes, get out and catch some fish. Thank you.
Charlie?
Nothing, sir.
Nothing. Okay. So one thing I want to pass along for council members, if you saw you received an email from the chief about a data collection form for our law enforcement emergency operations. If you guys haven't yet, if you would, please get that sent back to them so they can get that updated. With that said, I would entertain a non-debatable motion to adjourn. And Ben?
So moved.
Charlie?
Second.
Motion by Ben, seconded by Charlie. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We adjourn. 7-0.